What's going on, everybody? Yami here, one of the channel creators. In today's video, we are going to go ahead and go over some Phantom Troupe. This is going to be a deck profile covering Phantom Troupe. Primary targets for this are going to be Hisoka and Chrollo. This is going to be a pure Phantom Troupe build. Do keep in mind there is another build featuring Illumi and Killua from the Zoldyck family. It's kind of a hybrid build, if you would. Just to kind of go over my thoughts on that real quick, I do think the hybrid build is stronger, but the pure Phantom Troupe does have its own benefits in terms of it's more consistent, and it does do better into slower matchups. One thing with this deck, it does kind of struggle into more aggressive matchups, so just keep that in mind, but it can definitely hold its own. It's very playable in its current format. Don't expect to, win any big tournaments with it. It's not that competitive, but it is definitely strong enough to surprise your opponents and throw them through a loop. So we'll kind of go over the cards here, starting with our lowest cost, moving into our highest cost. So first up, we're going to have 3 copies of Paku. Essentially what she does is, when sideline, she draws you a card. So very simple, 0 energy generator. Nothing too crazy with her. She does have potential combo abilities that we'll talk about later on. But moving into that, we are going to have probably our best 0 cost energy generator, and that's Sphinx. He's when played, you draw a card and then you sideline a card, so it helps you cycle the deck and find more pieces that you're looking for. So very nice 0 energy there. Our next target here is going to be Chrollo. Nothing to say really with this one. He's our 0 cost Chrollo that helps us right into our big Chrollo. Can also be used as energy very early on. So in total, we are running 11 0 cost. Moving into our 1 cost, we have Machi. Machi's great. Essentially, she's the balance a 1 cost or less, and then she generates you 2 energy. So ideally, if we're going second, we want to do Sphinx into Machi. That way we just cycled a card, and then we also have 2 energy on turn 1. So these are kind of our lower end cards that help us gather energy early on. Moving from there, we're going to have the Searcher Chrollo. We have him at 4 copies. He's another raid target for the big Chrollo. And what this guy does is, when played, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Phantom Troupe affinity type character other than Chrollo, add it to your hand, and then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order, and then you sideline 1 card from your hand. So essentially he searches you a card, and then you sideline 1 card. Something to keep in mind with this card, he does not search the 4 cost Chrollo, the best card of the deck. So that's kind of the one thing that's annoying with this card, is he can't search his bigger self, but he does help you find pretty much any other piece in the deck. So just be careful when you're searching with this guy, because we don't want to bottom deck our 4 cost Chrollos. Moving on from there, we have 2 Shalnark. This card is very good. It's also fairly situational. So essentially what he does is he's a 3 cost, 3000 power. When played, play up to 1 character with a cost of 3 or less required energy, and 1 AP with Phantom Troupe and its affinity type, other than Shalnark, from your sideline, resting anywhere on the field. And then at the end of the turn, you sideline that character. So something that's very nice with this card, you can play it anywhere on the field. So you can potentially play this guy on the front line, and maybe a Machi on the back line, or another 2 cost energy generator, maybe a Sphinx. This guy is very versatile. He can let you cheat out energy for the turn, so you can kind of hit higher thresholds. And he also sets up a lot of combo potential. Card's very nice, but we do want to add just 2 of. Moving from there, we are going to have Franklin at 3 copies. This guy is our 2 energy generator for the most part. He does have a decent effect when played. Give your opponent's front line minus 500 BP for the turn. So it kind of helps hit like 35s and 45s into a specific range for us to kill. And oftentimes with this card, if you're smart about it, you do have the potential to kill multiple bodies a turn if you do your sequencing correctly. So you can do, like Shalnark into Franklin gives the board minus 500, and now you're also generating 2 energy if you put them on the back line. So a very decent card there. More often than not though, just going to be a 2 energy generator. And then for our next card, We have this guy at 4 copies. He's Noaga. He's a 3500. When played, if you have 3 or more other Phantom Troupe ability characters on the field, you can give one of your opponent's frontline characters minus 1000 BP for the turn. So this guy is really great because he allows us to get 4Ks within 3K range, and this deck kind of revolves around killing like 3000s or less. So he's kind of the bridge to that piece that helps us get there. And once again, playable off Shalnark, so you can do Shalnark into Nobunaga, give something minus 1000. So this card hits a lot of the cards in the deck, and that's what makes it so versatile. Next we have 3 copies of Faton. This is a 2 energy generator, 4 cost, 2 action points. So he is expensive in that regards, but he does have a very strong effect. When played, you choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and you give it minus 2000 BP. If you have 4 or less life, you instead give it minus 3000 BP. So that's kind of what I was talking about, and this deck revolves around killing 3000 or less. So you can do like Shalnark, Nobunaga, and the Faton, you just killed 4000, and you developed 2 bodies that will stick around. So the thing with this guy, he's 2 energy, so we typically like to have him on our back line. We keep him protected back there, so we can use our Raid Chrollo's effect and copy his effect again. Speaking of, we'll go into Raid Chrollo right now. So this is the best card in the deck, very strong. It's 4 cost, 1 action point, 4000 BP. Raid Impact 1. When played, choose up to 1 other character with Phantom Troupe affinity on your field other than Chrollo, and activate its when played ability. So this will hit anything in your deck. It activates Finks for cycle, it activates Shalnark for combo, Franklin for reduction, Nobunaga for reduction, Faton for reduction. This card is definitely the best card in the deck. You just need to know what lines to play around and what you're wanting to go for the turn. Sometimes you'll get this guy out of life, and honestly it's usually better just adding him to your hand unless you can do something impactful like maybe a Chrollo into a Faton to kill a 3k. Something like that would be very strong on your opponent's turn and kind of throw him through a loop. But his best target is Hisoka. And I still have the proxies because the cards haven't come in for him sadly, but hopefully we'll get those soon. There's a lot to unpack with Hisoka. This card's very good, and this card is very bad. He's 6 cost, 2 action points, so extremely expensive, and he is Impact 1. When played, what he essentially does is he can choose 1 character on your opponent's entry line and bring them to the front line. If the front line is full, you instead swap the places of a entry line and front line character on your opponent's field. So the main thing with this card is he allows you to pull energy generators, specifically 2 cost energy generators from your opponent's entry line and bring them forward. This then denies your opponent the energy they would need to either kill this guy or maybe play some impactful bodies. So I mentioned at the start that this deck does well into slower decks, so it can do well into decks that are trying to get to higher energy marks like Kurapika. Essentially, if you can do a Hisoka into a Chrollo and you rip 4 energy from their backline, that's almost impossible for any deck to come back from and answer these 2 efficiently. So if you're able to set up a Hisoka into a Chrollo, you might have just won the game at that point because you just stripped away 4 energy from them, ideally, and now they don't have the energy to deal with any of these guys efficiently. And let's say the front line is full. And you'll still want to swap out the 2 energy generators with something on their front line. So if they have, let's say, like a raid target, like a raid HxH, raid Kurapika, whatever it might be, on the front line, and they have the 2 energies on the back, you'll want to swap the 2. So you'd swap the 2 energies to the front and the raid character to the back, and then if you can do that again, you do that again. Because now you just pulled lower cost characters, you know, like 2500s, maybe 1500s. You pulled those to the front, and they're not able to block your lower attacks now. And they'll feel the need to go ahead and block and kill their 2 energy generators because now they can't get them to the backline. So they do that, and then next turn, they go ahead and push their raid targets that were on the energy line to the front line. And now they have practically no energy to play with. So that's kind of where the strength of this deck comes in, is energy denial. And it's harder to do against decks that are quick, because when you play Hisoka, you're bringing something to the front line. So you're giving them more attacks, essentially. So you will probably take a couple of damage. When you're playing Hisoka, especially into Hisoka and Chrollo, because now you just pull 2 targets to the front. But these guys, they are beefy enough to at least block a couple of the attacks for you. But yeah, the main combo piece is definitely Hisoka into Chrollo. It's hard to set up because he costs 2 and he costs 1 without the restand event. So the turn prior, if you don't have the restand event, you'd want to set up like a Chrollo, one of these 2 on the back line, and then going into your next turn you do Hisoka, and then you raid the Chrollo, activate its effect. If you have the restand to action point event, it becomes a lot easier though. But this card's very good in terms of it can block any 4K, it has impact, and it does deny your opponent energy. However, this card is also very slow, so if you play it at the wrong time, you will just end up dying to your opponent's aggression. So knowing when to play this card is important. Moving on from there, we are going to go ahead into our events. So we have 4 copies of Skill Hunter Bandit's Secret. So what this does is it chooses 1 character on your opponent's front line. It loses 3000 BP until the end of the turn. If Chrollo is on your field, choose up to 1 character other than Chrollo with a cost of 3 or less required energy and activate its when played. So Skill Hunter essentially activates everything up here except for Chrollo. So kind of interesting combo lines you can do is, you can use Skill Hunter to give something -3 into Shalnark's when played. You can bring out Nobunaga to give something -1, so now you just minus something by 4 and killed it. Knowing how to use this card is what's going to win you games. This card is insanely strong. It's the second best card next to Chrollo because it's very versatile, and this is kind of where the fun of the deck comes in for me. Comparing it to a lot of the other decks in the format, Phantom Troupe makes you think a lot more than other decks, and that's really, kind of riveting as a card game player, is being able to explore so many different options, so many different routes, and a card like this with how much versatility it has is kind of what allows these options to come forth. Unfortunately, I can't hit Faton because he's the forecast, otherwise that'd be really, really strong. But yeah, this card's very versatile, knowing how to play it and when to play it. Combined with Nobunaga and Franklin, our BP reducers, you can definitely kill multiple bodies a turn if you're smart with it. And then next up, we have Underworld Resident. Really nothing to say with this card. It's a restand to action point. It's your final trigger. Having this card allows you to do Hisoka Chrollo a lot easier, because you can do Hisoka, restand 2, and then you can use one of the tiny Chrollos and raid Chrollo, so that way you don't have to set it up the turn prior. So this card's very strong. It's a final trigger that restands 2. And then the last card of the deck, we have 3 copies of Spider's Tattoo. So this card is very strong in the fact that it looks at the top 4 cards of your deck and you reveal up to 2 characters with the Phantom Troupe affinity in their tag. You add them to hand and then put the rest on the bottom in any order. So the nice thing about Spider Tattoo is it pulls us our big Chrollo. Unlike our small Chrollo, who cannot search himself, Spider Tattoo searches anything except for these 2 because they do not have the Phantom Troupe affinity. But it will search the remainder of your deck and you get to add 2 cards, which is very strong. The main thing is you're probably going to want to use this towards the later game, because early game we're wanting to build energy and kind of develop bodies. So being able to play this early to find like your Chrollos and your Hisokas, very strong. And it's an active trigger, and this deck does have a lot of active triggers. We got 4 here, 3 here, 2 here, and then 3 here. So you do have a good amount of active triggers in that regards. But this deck's a lot of fun. Go ahead and try it out for yourself, see if you like it. As I did mention, I do think the hybrid build is better, but this one definitely does have its strengths into like slower decks. Is into Purple Bleach. If you're able to rip 4 energy with Hisoka, they're probably not recovering off that because they need their Getsus to answer him efficiently, where they need to have a lot in the trash with Raid Ichigo. But this deck's fun. Definitely give it a shot. I do thank you for taking the time to watch the video today. If you have any comments or feedback, please leave it down below, and have a great day.